Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Jim Kaplan. I'm founder of AuditNet, and with us today is my colleague and friend, Rich Lanza, an ACL and audit software expert. This webinar represents a collaboration between AuditNet and AuditSoftware.net in delivering training series focusing on audit software. Today's webinar is Learn to Effectively Script in ACL, range of basic, intermediate, and advanced techniques for all users. I'll be moderating today's webinar. A little bit about myself. As the slide shows, I am the founder and president of AuditNet, global resource for auditors, which is now available on the iPad, and Android devices. I am an audit professional, a chief audit executive, Internet for Auditors pioneer, and an auditor who believes and promotes the use of technology for audit. So a little bit of information about AuditNet on the next slide. You received the slides this morning. I'm not going to go over them. Before we proceed to today's material and introduce our presenter, Rich Lanza, I'd like to go through a few important housekeeping points. The webinar is being recorded, and you will all receive a copy of the recording. It takes about 5 to 7 days, business days, for that to be sent out, so please be patient. Also, because today's webinar does qualify for NASBA CPE, NASBA rules require us to ask polling questions during the webinar, and CPE certificates will be sent via email to those who answer all the polling questions. You will be receiving the link to the recording and the CPE certificates at the email address that you registered with in GoToWebinar. We are not responsible for delivery problems due to spam filters, attachment restrictions, incorrect email addresses, or other controls that you might have in place for your email client. You can submit questions during the webinar via the chat box on your screen. We will answer them. We usually try to answer them during the polling question breaks. So please submit your questions, and I'll be monitoring those and passing those along to Rich. Just a reminder, if you are joining us today from a tablet device, you might not be able to answer the polling questions, in which case you'll have to accumulate all of your answers, send them to myself or Rich in a single email, and we will record them in the software. After the webinar is over, you will have an opportunity to provide feedback. Please complete the feedback questionnaire to help us continuously improve our webinars. If GoToWebinar does stop working, you may need to close the application, restart it. You can always dial in and listen and follow along with the handout. You will receive, if you're joining us by phone, you do have to sign in to receive the PIN in order to join us by phone. So the next slide provides you disclaimers. I'm not going to go through those disclaimers. They are on the handouts, but basically it talks about what the views and positions and opinions of the presenter are, and did not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of AuditNet. So at this point, in order to give Rich the maximum amount of time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Rich for him to get into today's topic of scripting in ACL. Rich?
Great, thanks a lot, Jim. And thanks everyone for coming today. I do find that scripting is sort of one of my favorite topics, really, because I think it provides the most value to auditors, especially in a data analytic world where people move on from company to company. And if you have something left behind in a script, at least you could run it again. So, you know, in essence, that is what we'll talk about. I did write 101 scripts, and you could see it in a picture there kind of on its side for a book a long time ago in 1997. And ever since I've been writing scripts in ACL and other products, but mostly ACL. Looking at the learning objectives, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through these. As Jim says, they're in the slides, and we have a lot of content to get to. What I do want to note at this point, and it happens, we note it at the end of the presentation as well, is if you sign up for a free subscription at Audit Software Videos, and you then, and many of you probably have an access to it already because you come to past webinars, But if you've done that, we're going to give you the data files for 3 courses, and the data files kind of tell you what date course it was and the name of the course. So what I wanted to say is that this course is a collection or a distillation of 2 hours from about 6 hours of actual ACL scripting training, and that is available on Audit Software Video. So we'll give you kind of the links and what to do there. It's a free thing, but because one of the comments that we do get as we go through all these learning objectives and all the content today is that there's a lot that we're going through, and agreed in the sense that learning to script is something that's taken me probably 20 years to get really good at, and it's something that it can't be learned in 2 hours 100%, but I think you could do a lot of effective things with scripting in just a few minutes. So that's kind of the first start of this, and obviously you'll have the 2-hour training today, which definitely is something to watch because it's a good distillation, and then you'll have these videos to go back to afterwards to kind of further your training, keep you going, and then hopefully you'll continue from there. So, okay, with that said, the value of ACL scripting, in my mind, in a quick way, is that it's really useful to take all your routine tasks and put them together into something that you can just run as an audit step, especially if it's something that you can build in the quality once, kind of like that the product Ronco product, set it and forget it, and you have this thing cooking. But in essence, you can set a lot of that into the ACL scripting and then just run it. What's also good, though, is that you can learn how ACL works from behind the scenes. So as you're learning ACL, you really, as you're learning scripting, you really kind of learn what makes ACL tick in the background, and it's a very nice natural language is what they call it. So and it's something that you don't really see in other products out there, so I really like it. Okay, continuing on, quick process to running data. I don't want to forget the basics, which are know your audit objectives, figure out what reports align to those objectives, use past reports to kind of pull together a better set of reports, and then based on those reports set up the data requirements that you need to run, and then go ask for your data and normalize your data. But it does kind of start with what reports do you want, and I always like to ask people that before we kind of jump into getting data, doing kind of a test of that data, and then taking that test and making a script out of it. So just wanted to kind of now jump into ACL, but I'll just kind of note what we're going to do real quickly. Is there are a couple of methods to scripting. You can use the script recorder. There's probably another way too that I'm forgetting here, but the way that I normally do it, and a lot of people do it, is really just to use the ACL log file and to save the work to a script. So we're going to do that instead. I find it's a lot easier to teach you that approach. In looking at what we're going to do, we're just going to do some simple things, run statistics and stratify and extract some invoices, and just remember a few pointers as we're doing that. So let me kind of jump into ACL now, and what we have here is an ACL document. We're kind of, I guess, past the getting basics of ACL, just sort of opening up a file. We're getting right into scripting here. And I have the paid file open. Now, I built a script called 2-Minute Script Class so that if when you get these data files, if you want to kind of go to that, it does give you the results, okay, of what we're going to do here today. But I did want to, bear with me one second here, just wanted to show you that. Okay, and then in the paid file, what I would do normally is go to my log and normally say add a new session, and we'll call it 2-minute, if I can spell, 2-minute script. And once we've set that up, now what I can do is generally I find it might even be better to close this file first by right-clicking and closing it, and then opening up the file. So we're kind of going from bare bones here. Running statistics on anything we'd like: invoice date, enter date, check amount. Let's do those 3, and then we're going to run stratification on the check amount. Notice how the minimum and maximum come up automatically. We'll accumulate the check amount, and I'll I'll just do, just put in some, put in some kind of logarithmic sort of function here. And maybe everything over 100,000 too. So just kind of powers of 10, get a good idea of how this data stratifies at this point. Then what we could then do is just even looking at this is maybe say to ourselves, the average amount or stuff that makes up say 60% or more of our file, and that's we could be looking at either the count or the amount field over here. It's sort of ranging in that 10,000 to 100,000 range. So maybe I'll pick like 50,000 or something like that and say everything over 50,000. So what I would do is going to this paid file, I could set a filter at this point, and this is a simple way of doing it, and then just saying check amount greater than 50,000, and then extracting that sort of above the average amount to a new file called, over above, average. And now I have this data file called, over above average. And it's just based on, some taking a look at it and in the data. But notice here I can write or click on the 2-minute script. And by doing so, it will open up everything. I could even just kind of get rid of that close. I don't really need that. And looking at the open, paid file at this point, what I can do is I can right-click that and say save selected items to a script. And we can call this 2-minute script 0515.
Yeah. No, it should be okay.
And in doing that, it does create a script. Sorry, let me just head over here. And again, I'm doing wonderful installing today. So we have this 2-minute script here. And what I would normally do at this point is just add a set safety off at the top. And we'll talk about this in a second. And then a set safety on at the bottom. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow ACL to overwrite things and many questions it may ask you, it would just not ask you. It just kind of blows past them. So these are the commands in a very natural language. Let's take a look quickly at these commands here. We obviously opened up the paid file. We ran a statistics on that, stratification. And stratification's here. If you wanted to change the strata, you could do that here. One of the thoughts was, we kind of liked maybe having the 50,000. Given that data, maybe we throw that one in there. Why not? Then we could say, set anything greater than the 50,000, and then extracting that to there. So now I have the script. I could run this next month on the paid file, and in running that, it'll kind of run through the entire script. You can actually see down here where, let me just deselect that. Right about here, it kind of started with that script and then ran through everything. And if you want to look at the results, you just go to the log and click on each one of these items here. So again, just trying to show you that scripting isn't that scary. And I even find, the natural language of ACL is not too bad. Once you get used to it and you kind of use the dialogues, what it does is it gives you the command language, and then you kind of remember what you did, and it makes sense. So the language isn't that hard to learn, and something that you can quickly get a script going pretty quickly. So let me just kind of launch this first polling question just to keep on track. The polling questions we do from time to time really just to track your attendance. And what comes first? Identifying data sources, requesting data, building scripts, or listing report ideas. Getting data sources is the first one, listing report ideas is the second, requesting data third, and building scripts is fourth. And just kind of checking the questions here just while we're all chatting on the poll. I kind of track how quickly you answered as well, so we can move on quickly as you quickly go over it. Okay, just some questions on the handouts. We did send them out as in an email from AuditNet. Should have sent that to you. You should be seeing that in your email box. and hopefully that'll help you on that. You will be getting the slides as part of the data files, that we'll be giving at the end of the conference as well. Okay, almost everyone's voted on the polling questions, and just myself just tracking questions as we go here. And again, doesn't seem like anything's coming in, but this is a good time to do it. Almost everyone's voted. I'd like to keep these open for about 90 seconds or so, so we're almost at that mark. So I'll keep it going for another 10 seconds here. Okay, so let me close that poll and share it, and the majority was correct. Listing the data sources is the first thing that you should do before requesting data, just before really understanding what you want to run. That way you kind of know better what to ask for. So let me hide that, and hopefully you'll be seeing my screen in a second here. Here we go. And let's kind of now talk about hard-coded versus non-hard-coded dialogues. We do have this 101 ACL applications, and lots of ways to get it for free. Usually we give it out as part of some of the webinars we do. What I've done is I've taken 3 scripts out and given them to you for free, and that'll be in the data files that you have that I'll be playing with here today. But I wanted to show you how the 101 ACL applications is more of a hard-coded set of scripts where the fields and the variables and everything is kind of hard-coded, whereas we'll just skip over that. Whereas the payables test set version, where we have this other script called Then Interest PTS, it's from payables test set. It's called vendor interest, and what it allows you to do is kind of calculate a day's payable outstanding and interest lost and all that. But it can be universally applied. I mean, you select your data, you select your fields. It's pretty kind of simple and easy. So let's kind of head back over to ACL. Just bear with me 1 second here. Okay, so as I said, scripts will present themselves. It may be hard for you to see, but it actually looks like a little script or log that's been on a scroll that's been opened up, if you will, and those are where people will put their natural language code. Now, the data tables that we have below actually look more like an Excel spreadsheet, and it's a table. So just noting that the scripts above here that you'll kind of see are the GenLed 2, 6, and I think even the Vendor Interest 101. So let's just take a look at the, let's take quickly a look at the one that we had developed ourselves, and this 2-minute script one. Sorry about that. So this is the one that we had played with. And notice how the field names and the table names are all set. The 50,000 is set, etc. That, again, is an example of a hard-coded situation versus one that isn't. And when you look then at the vendor interest payables test set as an example, this is one where we have a lot more information here and such, but for the most part, we have a dialog box that opens up a data table, and that is then saved to a variable called input, which is then opened up. So it's more of it's universal, right? And you select the table. Then after that, it's going to do the fields as well, where you'll select the fields, and it will kind of run its thing. Now, we're going to spend a lot more time in just a minute talking about developing like each dialog box and all that, but I just want you to get the concept down right now of the difference between a universal application like this and one that is hard-coded scripted where you actually have the field names and the file names, table names right in the data, and you can't really change that. Okay, so in running the one that is, we ran one that just kind of ran. Now we're going to run one that is something that you select, and we select the payables table, invoice date, check date, invoice amount, or they call it check amount, discount, the vendor name field, and then you enter some percentage of interest that you want to use. So once you've kind of selected all of your fields, you can hit the OK button, and it then calculates this weighted days payable outstanding by vendor and interest loss for not paying and 30 days and 45 days and all that. And I'm not trying to spend too much time on that because that's not really the point of today. But what is kind of interesting is not only does it kind of create all these variables and such. The variables, if I didn't say delete all, okay, the variables get saved in ACL now in this little section over here. So it's kind of interesting and useful as the variables are created by the script. Actually ACL will kind of log that and track that as it goes. These are right now the two differences between these. And let me just give me 1 second here. And what I was going to do is now talk about developing each dialog box and kind of going into more depth there, because I think the universal application is a lot more interesting versus kind of hard coding things a lot. I think people get more value out of that. So just give me 1 second, we'll get that set up for you. Okay, so what we're going to use is the project item dropdown, which I find is the most versatile in selecting your tables, your fields, even selecting variables if you wanted to do that. I tend to find that I'm rarely selecting a variable. I enter a variable in, but I'm rarely kind of selecting it. But also your scripts as well, that you may want to select a script and have it just run that way, which you could do from the project item list. But again, I usually will, as we'll show you in a few minutes, utilize some other tools there to basically run a script if you select an item. Because what I find is no one wants to see a script name called, paid _ test _ interest or something. They want to see run the days payable outstanding test. That's a lot more user-friendly and interesting for use. So again, that's what we can do there. And the other dialogues, as we talked about, was the drop-down, where you would put numbers and characters in there, and that might be something like you could select an interest rate, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could select what you want. You could add a radio button, which is another one, and that would maybe say do a script if you select that radio button. Or you might have a checkbox where, again, if you had 10 reports listed out, you might want to have a checkbox for each one. You could select them, and then you can have the script run each one. And then the text entries we talked about is where you can enter the numbers and characters. So aside from the project item drop-down, these are the other drop-downs that we utilize, and again, I find the project item is the one that we utilize the most. What I wanted to do is open up the 2-minute script, and what I was going to do is now edit this script to accept all of these dialogues that we've just set up. And instead of having it be something that we could, I guess this way we were selecting it as opposed to it being hard-coded, and then this would be something that you could select. So with that said, what we'll do first off is I'm going to set up a pause statement, and in the pause statement, in quotes, what I'll do is say this is a 2-minute script to extract above average invoices and calculate stats on our invoice pay data. We'll just say invoice data. So that's that pause statement that we talked about a second ago. And then what we'll do is we'll then open up a dialog, which for right here I'm going to select the build new dialog. And we're going to rather quickly, because we just did this a second ago, I'm going to select the project item list. And we're going to call this input, again, just to keep it simple here. And in the category, we're going to put the table section over, and we'll open this up. And then in the text box here, we're going to note select input file. And now we have the select input file there with the drop down. I'm going to close this, and we're done. Now, what I know is that I've used this paid file throughout, so I can right-click and copy that, and then I can do a find. And when it says find what, I can say paid file, and I'm going to replace with, again, percentage marks, input, percentage marks. Find the next one, replace, replace. Now I've replaced my hard-coded item with this input. Next one, check amount, is what we need to get rid of. So I'm going to now build a new dialog. And this is a good one to show you. Bear with me. And we'll say, select check amount. There we go. And in here, we're going to also do the project item list. But this one, I'm going to call it, maybe we can call it V underscore check AMT. So it's variable check amount. And I'm going to select numeric fields, add that to the item, and then anything that's been designated in ACL as a numeric field is something that we'll be able to take a look at. Bear with me 1 second here. Okay, and then I guess, yeah, we don't really need a default here. We have that variable check amount. I'm just going to copy this, so I'm just going to right-click and say copy. We'll hit OK. I'll just open this up so you can kind of read whatever field you put in there, hit the OK button, and now I have another dialog. And if you want to get a little crazy, I guess you could comment here and say to select table, and down here to select fields. And then that way you know what these dialogs are. Now I'm then going to highlight the check amount field, do a Control F. It's another way to quickly put whatever's there in here. Replace it with V check amount, and then go replace. Oops, and I goofed up there. I should have put percentage marks. There we go. Rushing. Replace, 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 replace. And I just need to remember now to go back up here and put this guy in between percentage marks. So just to be safe here, I'm going to close my script and say, yes, I do want to save that so that I can go back in now, and I have not only my dialogs, but I also have my open input, statistics on check amount. Just taking a look here, what else do I need to set? I have this average one, but that's actually being set by the program itself. So it's not something that I really need to set at this point, so I'm not too worried about that. And continuing on and through this. So I think we're good here to run this script now. So let me kind of run this, showing you how to utilize the pause statement. Select input file, paid file, select check amount, and voila, we're back and have our answer just like we had before. But now you could call paid file something completely different. You could call your check amount field something completely different, and it would work perfectly. Okay, so let's kind of go to another dialog, because we've probably explained, hopefully, the project dropdown well enough for you. I'm going to create a new script, and to do that, I would right-click and say New Script, and I can do that anywhere in the ACL project window over there. And in this new script, I'm going to add another couple of dialogs. So the first dialog I'm going to set, let me just kind of drag this down here. First dialog that I'm going to set is a checkbox, and I'm going to select the checkbox here, and we'll call this, again, V underscore maybe 2min, something like that, and maybe 2-minute SCR for script. So that's the variable. And in the label, I'm going to say at this point we'll call this to run the 2-minute script. Okay. Then I can select another checkbox just for fun here, and in this one I'm going to call this V, and maybe we'll call this then interest script, then int script. and in the label to run the vendor interest script. Okay. And now we have both of those in there. So now the checkboxes, and we'll maybe, I'll put a little title to this as well by hitting the text box up here and just saying, you know, to select scripts to run today. Okay. So I can rename this script now that I have it. I can close it. Maybe that's the best thing to do. And I'm going to rename this script and call it maybe something like _main menu, and then that'll bring it right to the top. So that now I have a main menu script that's going to run the 2-minute script, as well as I'll show you in a second, the vendor interest 101 script. Okay, going back to the main menu. Now the two variables that we set in here, one was called v 2-minute script, and one was called v then interest, I believe, script. And I'm just going to go back here to my dialog to check that. So v then int script, and okay, and v 2-minute script. Now what I can do is I can add a statement. If v 2min script equals t. And in this case, we're not putting the percentage marks around it, by the way. It's just, you know, if v 2min script equals t, then what we'll do is we'll go do script and rather than typing all this, I'm going to call it 2-minute. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Sorry. Yes, I do. Okay, we're going to do this script here, and I'm just going to rename that. I ran it by mistake. We're going to do the 2-minute script. And then here, just to interest of time, I'll do some copying and pasting here. Okay, so first off, it's going to, you know, if basically based on the dialog, if this variable equals t, do that script. If that equals t, then do that script. We'll hit the OK buttons and run this main menu. So let me just run the vendor interest script, you know, because it'll just run through cleanly. And it ran the vendor interest script. Now it didn't stop at that point and start asking me all those wonderful questions that we had in here in the dialogues because I didn't select that one. Now if I go again and say run the 2-minute script this time, I can actually, you know, go through the motions of selecting those, and it runs that at that point. And at that point, we have basically gone through the 2 scripts here to run through. I'm just kind of just taking a look there. That should have gone through, and then that runs through those scripts there as well. So again, you're able to select each one that you want to select, and it'll run through the scripts accordingly. So that's basically how you would select using a checkbox. Let me go back to this main menu, and in this case, I'm going to comment out that dialog, and I'm going to add a new dialog box in this case. And in this one, we're actually, what I'll do here is, bear with me one second, we'll kind of add a new script here. And now we're going to select the dialog or radio button. Now the radio button is going to determine which one you're wanting to run. So we could say, you know, run, then we'll just say the first label might be like 1, run vendor interest script. We'll add that. So that's the default. That's number 1, and that's kind of a key here. I mean, we could call it radio 1. I could call it anything I want. Maybe I'll call it, you know, v_radio 1, and then in the other one we'll call it run the 2-minute script. Okay, we'll add that as number 2. So now we kind of have a selection box And again, in my text here, I'll just add, to select one or another script to run. And then that allows you to walk through the dialog box that way. Okay, so with that set up, now what we can do is I'm going to edit my script accordingly. One of them being to basically say v_radio1, and I'm going to copy that down here. Okay, so essentially if the v_radio1, and let me just make sure I take a look at that, v_radio1 equals a 1, then do script 2-minute script class, then if not, do script vendor interest 101. Okay, so now that we run through the scripts here, we'll run, and I'll run the 2-minute script, and and actually I goofed a little bit there. It really should have been the other way around. So apologize about that. Let me just fix that there. So if I run through this again and run the 2-minute script, it then will kind of walk me through running through this 2-minute script that we just built a second ago. I just goofed when I set up my main menu. Again, v_radio1 equals 1 is the vendor interest. Let me just make sure, yep, see vendor interest, and then the second one was the 2-minute script. So that's why that was set up accordingly. So that walks you through how to do almost everything that we've talked about. The last thing that I'm just going to show you in this vendor interest payables test set is the text input. And the text input, let's take a look at this dialog box here. The text input where we said enter the investment percentage. Let's double click on that. I created a variable called PERC, percent, PERC. That's that variable. So that is this edit box right up here on the left-hand side under the text. Sure. And we'll save that. So now that editing text box, I just want to show it to you in the report here. If I enter a 3 in here like we've done before, that will then be saved into the memory of ACL as a variable. And then that variable percent, notice I'm using the percentage marks, divided by the 100.0000, then I can start to recalculate how that percentage will be utilized by the ACL script. So again, that walks us through all of the different types of dialog boxes within ACL, like all of the different options here that we have with regards to setting up text, edit boxes, checkbox, radio box, drop-down list, and project item lists. Okay, so okay, so we're back to the polling question, and that polling question is, what is put at the beginning of a script to have it overwrite existing tables? And you have the 4 options there. Set overwrite on, set overwrite OK, set safety off, or set safety on. And again, a good time if you did want to ask any questions, feel free. In going through this, yeah, we do have a lot going on today in the scripting class, and we do have the additional videos that follow this up as more of a just-in-time training afterwards, because agreed, there's a lot to learn in scripting in ACL. And I think though, especially some of the early stuff that we did with setting up an initial script, a lot of that can be used to set up your own initial scripts and get going moving forward with ACL. Some of the dialog box work, what you find there is that 17-minute or so lesson there is something that really has a lot in there with regards to setting up dialogues, and something I refer back to as well, just to remember, the exact kind of nomenclature of ACL. So just closing that poll and sharing it with everybody, and set safety off is correct as the main one. So that being said, going through the questions here. Great question in there, and tried to mention it in the beginning there. But one of the things, let me just try to make sure that you're looking at my screen here. And so let me hide this poll. Give me 1 second here. Okay, hide that, and you should be seeing my screen in a second. So jumping into ACL and into one of the scripts that we've developed versus it having kind of a dialogue to it and such. The actual percentage marks is what ACL calls a macro substitution, so that when you put the percentage marks in there, it turns it into being just like a textual kind of item, such as the word paid file. So it kind of turns it from this word paid file, and this is saved as like a character in ACL's brain. What it does is it then changes that into the word input, but by putting the macro substitution of the percentage marks around it, now ACL will see that as a table, and it doesn't see it as just kind of some text within ACL. And the same is true with fields. So tables and fields kind of utilize that, and then also in certain cases as well, the actual percentages that are being utilized. So this would be like a numeric value that we put in there, that interest percentage that we were showing as well. So yeah, no, very good question. And just making sure, trying to answer as many of the questions as possible here, just trying to open up my little GoToDaddy. Okay. GoToWebinar, sorry. Okay, great. So, moving onward, I wanted to show you kind of some of the differences in the newer versions of ACL. And this is version 10. I'm going to show it to you on this slide because I think it actually goes a little bit quicker to show it to you on the slide. And trying to show you all the script editor changes in one picture so that you can get an idea of everything that's happening. And for the most part, ACL really has kind of amped up the color coding of their scripting, as well as the lines, number of lines, so that you could kind of see where a line starts and ends. I don't know if you could see this, but at line 24, you could see there's like 3 or 4 actual lines there, but it's all line 24. That is something where it obviously is stretching and word wrapping around, so that you have that. The ability to word wrap around as well is something that you can select, so that's an option. You don't have to use it, but it's kind of useful. And then changing the fonts. Basically, you can go into the options of ACL and change kind of the fonts within there. So let me just kind of show you that rather quickly, but yet something for you to explore later on. So let's take a little bit of a simpler script that we developed today, just something like this. Now, what we can do is sort of turn everything off, so you have no color coding, and then what you can do is obviously click on the option for color coding, and that will kind of colorize your words. Now, the way it's sort of set up based on your options, which is the style over here, and what you can do is kind of change, well, I want my comments to be green and my commands to be dark blue, and the parameter functions, and these are other components of ACL for sure. But what it is nice in that you're able to kind of see everything in ACL, as well as just see some of the field names kind of pop out as just really just black text at this point, so it's a little bit easier, and these are the table names like paid file here. From a word wrap point of view, we'll have to go to another script just to show you that, because I don't have a whole lot word wrapping, but if I word wrap this one, you can kind of notice things are wrapping around. But it's easier to show the line number, because the line number here will then allow you to kind of see that one line stretching across multiple lines. So all of this is in above here. You can obviously select any of the options above here to be able to kind of get to some of these new options. Now, another thing I wanted to show you here is I'd set up a couple of folders on the left, one being for scripts and one being for tables. You can set up many more. I mean, you can actually set up by going right-click New and then Folder, and then, maybe in this case we'll actually call it Scripts 0515 for, stuff we did today. And it is something where you're able to then move scripts by clicking and dragging them into those folders. And I mean, there are some definite ways of numbering these folders so that you can set things up as maybe SO1 underscore, and then that way you basically have a folder SO1. It brings it all to the top. And then after that for scripts 0515. So I mean, you can definitely kind of change how things are sorting within ACL and the folder structure. But just going back to the slide for a second, there is this set folder command. And the set folder command in ACL, we can just kind of set a simple one here, but sorry, the slide has a much more complex one. But in ACL, we can just set a new folder. So if we ran this 2-minute script, but yet in the beginning of it, we set up something like, set folder / and then after that, even just created something totally new, SO1, all scripts 0515, something like that. By now running this script in ACL, what it will do is it should create a new folder called all scripts 0515, and then it ends up putting the results, and everything kind of gets sent to that folder from that point forward of setting that folder up. ACL is kind of useful, I think, in that perspective, that it allows you to basically set folders and then also kind of throw your results to those folders as you need them. Okay, so at this point, what I wanted to do is talk to you about a little bit more of a complex concept, but also something that I think will be quite useful for you, which is running this monthly stratification script. So just give me a second here and we will get this going for you. Now working through a script that I enjoy a lot because it does so many things and provides such a great perspective to the data, no matter what you're working with, while at the same time teaching you a lot of complex scripting abilities. So first off, we're going to build complex conditional fields, and I want to walk through a variety of those, one of which will use the date field, and we're going to set the date up front, the format of the date, so that we can use it in a certain way. And it creates a way for you to more consistently apply date variables. We're going to be using these variables in dialog boxes, so they'll show up there, as you'll see, and using them in file names themselves, so the file name will change depending on how you edit your variables. We're going to adjust the field names as well, and then one example of that is when you export field names as another field name. So there's a lot going on here. So invoice amount to could just be now total invoice amount when you export it to Excel. And we're really just maximizing the stratify command using this key field and then the crosstab function. And all of this is going to create a monthly stratification of your data. So you'll stratify your data, but then do it in a monthly format so that you can see month over month the change in activity, which again is really interesting, and I doubt anyone in your organization is running this. So it provides a different perspective that no one else is seeing right now. Going into ACL now, we have some scripts set up. I have a paid file that we're going to work off of. It has a check amount field, and it also has an enter date field, although we could use check date, enter date, whatever you'd like. And we're going to move into this stratification script. So taking a look at this script, what we've built here up front is a dialog box that will first select a paid file, and it's going to be putting it to an input variable. So that input variable we're going to use in a second here. And notice it's a project item, a drop-down list, where we have tables selected, and we're putting that as the input. Okay, and we're going to then open up that input file, which is done here. Again, we're putting percentage marks around the word input in order to have ACL utilize it. And this gets a little different as we start working with variables. It's almost like you have to look back to refer back to how we're going to use certain variables later in the process, and we'll talk about that in a second. Now, in the second dialog box, I could try to find it in here, but it may be a little bit difficult, so I may just show you it in the actual item itself. So I think this is the edit box here where we have that edit to input, but let's take a look here. When we go into this dialog box and edit it, notice here we have select the following fields from the, and it's blank. Now this is where we're going to put in the variable input, and that was that edit box that we saw there. Now, between you and me, I tend to not like working with the actual code itself in the dialog box. We're going to show you how to do some of it later, but it is a little cryptic to read. I mean, it's something where, yes, you can learn it, but just like working in DOS mode, this is kind of working in DOS mode, and changing this here, the word input, and where it's saying the edit box here, and where it is located in the actual dialog and the width itself. I think kind of moving to the Windows approach, selecting that, opening it up, and then just being able to add this edit box here, which is what we did. So we just kind of added an edit box there, and let's see if I can get rid of that. And then we in that edit box, we just put the word input in there. And by doing so, again, it's going to kind of bring that up as the variable or default value that you can then show, because you've already set it up here in that first dialog here. Okay, now we're just going to select the invoice amount and payment date. Now, I'm going to change this, just for argument's sake, just to be amount. And in this date project item drop-down list, we've only isolated the date field. So that's the category that we brought over to that category list, and we're saving that to a variable called pay date. So I'm going to save changes to that dialog box so that we can have that. And moving forward now into the script. So now I wanted to talk through the first of our definition of fields where we're using a date variable. And you could do this any way you'd like in the set date format. So by setting date, what that is doing is in your options in ACL, you have the ability to set your date to whatever you'd like. And, year, month, day, or, whatever. Now, I'm using this format. You could use anything, but, we're saying set date, day, month, year. And then when we define the pay year month, now we're using some variables here. What I'm going to be doing is creating a new field that will, in essence, take the year and add to it the month, and that will be a text-based field. So we're going to actually have some text in or character-based field that has the year and month added together. And to do that, we're going to take the date function of the pay date, which will convert that to a character. But knowing that the date format is day, month, year, that we can basically say we're going to then sub that at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mark, so starting at the 7 mark and extending for 4. So that's going to kind of isolate that year of the date field, which is here, and then we're going to add on to that the month of that date field, which is done there, and then that would be starting at the 4 spot, so 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess, in the way it calculates, and going for 2. So that is how we can create this month field, pay year month field, that we're going to show later. And we also create a pay year field, which is kind of just this part up here. And with that said, I'm not exactly sure we use this field later on, except possibly in this key. Nope, we don't even use it there. So it's something where I think we just created this and left it for future reference. Okay, so the sorting on pay year month to sorted open is done so that we can now calculate a stratification. Now, in this stratification, we're going to have to be a little careful in that I have decided where things begin and end. Now, if you have data that has negative items that go to the negative billion mark, I would suggest creating a stratify range that goes to the negative billion mark. Now, in my data, actually the sample data we don't even have numbers that go anywhere near these limits. So it's really not something to worry about. But with your data, keep that in mind. We need to sort that on the pay year month, because notice back over here we have this key field. And that key field, if we look at any sort of stratification, let's kind of go to the stratify command here. In the more option, we have something called a break, and we want to break on a certain field. So in the break on a certain field, we're going to break on this pay year month. And what that's going to do is it's going to calculate a stratification for every different pay year month. The only difference is we need to sort it, because ACL will go through this, and if you have, let's say, July 2012 followed by January 2011 followed by July 2012, it's going to break at every one of those instances. So you need to kind of put it in order first and then apply the stratification command. Now let's go to our paid file, and in my table layout, I have created this pay year month already based on the enter date. Have that all set up in there. I'll discard any changes, and then what we'll do is I'm going to sort on that particular field, pay year month, to a file called sorted. Now that I have that sorted, notice the enter date is pretty well sorted there. I'm going to run statistics on my check amount field. I always like to run statistics before you stratify. And then I'm going to stratify on the check amount field, accumulate check amount. Again, it gives you your minimum and maximum automatically. Noting my minimum and maximum, maybe I'll just put in here a 0. Let me just put in one negative item. So let me put negative 1,000, 0, 100, kind of powers of 10 here, going upwards. Okay, so that should cover us from a minimum maximum point of view. Hit the OK button. Oop, forgot to do a lot of stuff actually. So in the break field, we want to select the pay year month, and that's going to now break on that pay year month, which is now sorted. And in the output file, we're going to hit the ACL table, and we can call this stratify test. And notice here, I now have a stratification by the month year with this 0, 100, 1,000, etc. And notice here that, the 0 in this case is everything up until a 0, and this is everything up until 100, and this is everything up until 1,000, and, continuing and forward from there. And then that check amount field, which, let's take a look at this, it's called check amount, which is a little odd, because we had a check amount field, and that's now become check amount 2. So it's now we now have 2 fields. The actual computed summary or accumulated field is this check amount 2. The item that just shows us what our strat range is now called check amount. Now let's go back into the stratification script now that we know that, and let's take a look at this more complex computed field that we've created. We actually have a couple of them. So the invoice amount in this particular case, the variable, was set in the dialog, and it was what we were calculating off of. And notice it's invoice amount. It's not invoice amount 2 or anything like that. The stratify range takes the form of whatever you named that amount field. And what we're doing here is we're saying, you know, under 10 million would be items that are items up until a negative 10 million, and that's what that number is. Then this one would be everything from negative 10 million to negative 5 million, and negative 5 million to negative 1 million. And because what we have here is quite cryptic, you know, what does that mean? I mean, we know it because we're ACL coding gurus, but for everyone else that is going to be reviewing these reports, that is more of a user reviewing it, they're never going to understand what that means. So what we're doing here is we're giving a much better name to every one of those fields. And we're now just adding things like 0 to 100, 101 to 500. So again, this is the upper limit, and that's why that upper limit is stated here. I just note, please make sure your data doesn't extend beyond this, because again, we can use this to help that process out with the under 10 million, but I think it's better to really kind of make the stratification work closer to the data that you're using as opposed to just using what I have here. Again, what we're also going to do is create another stratify item, which is a stratify order. And because up here, notice, this data, if I try to sort on this field now, it'll kind of create a jumbled mess probably. I mean, I think the 1001 would show up right underneath the 101. The 500 would end up way down here under the 10,000 and 100,000 because it would sort by 1, and then it would go to the next number, which is 2, and then it would go to the next number, which is 5, you know, so it'd be a sorted mess. However, if we then create a stratify order field, which is computed this way, and just to be clear, I mean, we've done this more in the basic types of videos, but if you take a look here, we're creating a stratify order, define field stratify order, and we're computing it, and then underneath that, we're basically adding a blank space. And in that blank space, or carriage return, we then, after that, start our stratify order, which is all of our conditions. And after all the conditions are done, we then have this default value of 0, which really should never come up, but you have to have something. So we threw that in there as kind of a final item. So that's going to create the two defined fields that really drive a lot of this monthly stratification, or really the three of them. We have the pay year month, the stratify range, and the stratify order. So now we're going to talk through a couple of more interesting uses of variables. And this is something, I got to be honest, I tend to have to remember a lot of times how these things are used and where we do things one way versus another. But this is where we're changing the names of variables. So again, this is a great script to go back to because it covers so many types of variable changes and usage that you really could use this as kind of your cheat sheet to get you back to understanding it. In this first one, notice how we had that check amount to. Now, invoice amount to, by creating this variable, I mean, one way of doing it is put the word assign in front of it, but let's not do that. We don't have to anymore. So we put invoice amount to equals invoice amount, which in this case would be check underscore amount, plus the number 2. So it's going to ultimately look like something like this. So that's now going to be that variable invoice amount to. Then below that, we're going to have an output variable, which is the input file. Remember, in this case, we had a paid file. And then we're going to add to that year month strat. And we're doing this in quotes, just like we did above. And notice that we're not using percentage marks here, right? Because that would confuse things. So we're not using that. We're just using, again, output now will be the input variable plus year month strat. So we'll have that as well. So now when we look at this export command down below, we can notice here one last thing, and talked about in the slide, is the pay year month as payment year / month. When we're exporting this data, that is how it's going to show up in the exported data. So instead of having this, somewhat more cryptic type of field name, you're going to have this one. Stratify range, stratify order, count, as count, count percentage is percent of count. So we could say count percentage. What does that mean? Well, it's the percent of count. And you could call these things anything. But I kind of like this one here as we're noting where we have invoice amount 2, which again, the invoice amount 2 we set up in this variable right here. So that invoice amount 2 is now being referred to as total invoice amount. So that's all going to be in this Excel output file. And what's the output file name? Again, it's paid file underscore year month strat. So in just a few statements here where we are assigning some variables here and then using this export command with the as field names and using the output file, we're handling quite a bit here and in just one small case. And keep in mind, you should refer back to this particular script because it shows you, even though we're putting in percentage marks the output file as an example, you then have to put quotation marks around that variable that has percentage marks. So it's very different how we use these variables in the ACL scripting depending on whether or not you're using it as a file name or if you're using it as part, in line with the actual command itself. So moving now downwards into the script, we now calculated that stratification. We then exported that stratification, so that's useful. But then we want to cross-tab that stratification, and we're going to cross-tab on the stratify range field, which again is something that we had up above here, right? So that's here. And in cross-tabbing on that, we can then add in the columns category the pay year month, subtotaling on, and notice now how I do this a little bit differently here. Notice up here we could have had invoice amount 2 in quotes. I actually, so in other words, in percentage marks, so I could have done it like that, but purposely I did it like that just to show you again how you can use variables a little bit differently in ACL. In this case, we can do invoice amount, which would be, in this case, we use the word check underscore amount, and then just put a 2 right after it, so that that's now how we can define that particular field in that crosstab query. And then that is going to go to a file called crosstab stratify value. And then I also did it on the volume itself. So we're subtotaling the value here first. And we could just get rid of this count field because we don't need it there. And then we're going to subtotal or stratify on the count separately. So I'm going to have a cross-stratified value and a cross-stratify volume. And down below here, we're then just going to delete some of the temporary tables that were created in this process. So we don't need them, and we get rid of them. And let's run this, but then I want to show you how I want to make one last edit to this particular script to make it even better. But again, let's now run it so that we can see the results. So just closing the stratification script, I will save it. And by right-clicking and selecting Run, I can select the sample file, which we'll use the paid file. In this case, again, shows up here. In the amount, check amount. In the date, let's put that enter date, hit OK. Does a couple of things. And now we have the year-month strat table, which is somewhat useful, but a little hard to read and utilize. But we did export that data. And then what I really like is this cross-stratify value. Now, what's kind of interesting as you look at this is, again, it's not maybe sorted in the best possible way, as we noted here, and hence why I wanted to play around with this. And as you look at the cross-tabulate, even though we don't have it here, you can cross-tabulate on multiple rows. So we're going to actually do that here in a second. So let's go back into our script for editing. So now going into the stratification script, we're actually going to go down to the stratify order computed field, but notice how this is a numeric field. So we could do this one of two ways, but it's best to keep it as a numeric for purposes of the sort order. It makes it a lot easier for sorting purposes. However, we want to create a new field, so we're going to create a stratify order character, and let's do this down by the crosstab. So what we can do here is we're going to say delete field stratify order
CHR OK. And that just, make sure that if it was there, it's going to delete it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say define field, stratify order character. And in this case, we're going to take a string function of the stratify order field. And that string function, let's keep it to a 12, and maybe what I'll do is I'll all trim this particular item as well. So that is going to create this stratify order field. We're going to all trim it, but yet it's going to calculate that. And then now that we have this field, I can add that to my stratify range. So now that I have that field in there, and it needs to be a character field because you can't cross-tab on a value field, so we have to do it that way. But now that we have that, we can always convert it back to a numeric once we're into that cross-tab. So now that, we'll take this function here, and in each one of these cross-tab queries, we're going to then say, let's go back and create define field and delete field and define field. Now that we've cross-tabbed this item, we're going to then open it. We're then going to delete the field stratify order. We're going to define the field stratify order. And in this case, we now need to convert it back to a value so that it's more useful for sorting purposes. And the field was called stratify order character, and we're just going to put a 0 after it. So now that we have that set up, we just got to be real careful here and just go back to the original file that we opened up. And the original file that we had way back up here was called the year-month strat file. So we're going to open up year-month strat. So just moving all the way down here to this crosstab, we first calculate the stratify order character. So just to maybe be careful here, we're just going to open year-month strat again, just to kind of keep it simple here. We're then going to define that stratify order character field. We're going to cross-tab on it, using it. We're then going to, now that we've opened up that new table, the crosstab table, we're going to stratify on the value, or create a value of that. We're then going to do the whole process again, except this time we already have that first field defined in the year-month strat. We have that character field defined, but we don't have this value field defined in this new crosstab. And again, we need to open up that crosstab. So let's be careful there. And in looking back now at the data I'm seeing, or the actual defined statements, I forgot the word computed because this is a computed field. So we need to put the word computed wherever we're putting a defined field statement. So stratify order computed. And down below here, stratify order computed. And then everything else should work from there. So now let's run this one more time. And we're going to run it on the paid file. Check them out. Enter date. Everything seems to have run through, and now that I go to my value stratification, I can now sort in an ascending order on this item here. That's the character version of it. Let's go to the actual proper one and do a quick sort ascending, and notice here we actually have it sorted the way we want it. Looks really great over here, obviously. And then over here we have our values only in a more stratified format. And again, this is a really useful report because you can look across the next number of months and years and see how things change every month and year. And our goal here, especially if you put this into Excel and graph it, which is outside the scope of today, but if you do that, you're actually going to see trends in the data in certain months in a certain stratify category that you don't see in other fields or other months. And that's really interesting. I mean, just even looking at this kind of bogus data that we created here, in certain categories, you have data that really tends to be very, very consistent. I'm just looking at this whole row here. It's very consistent as you go across, whereas other months you see other data points popping out that never happen, except for maybe a month here, and it doesn't happen for a few more months. So it is a way of isolating change rather quickly from a time perspective and a size perspective.
Okay, back to the polling questions, and in this next polling question here, just kind of looking back a bit, which item was not provided as a new feature in ACL Script Editor? We were talking about some of the changes in version 9 and 10. Is it word wrap? Not it. Is it line numbering? Not. Is it not the spell check? Or is it not the font style customization? So if you could pick from those. And I do like the the Stratify example that we've provided you there is essentially a pretty complex script, although it really kind of gets to the heart again of scripting fields and dialogues in ACL, which I do find a lot. It kind of depends on that in a lot of ways, that the fields and tables, obviously, of ACL are kind of like the main things that you're changing, and then it's sort of how to do that. And I really like that script, and obviously you'll be getting that in the sample files, and you can watch the video from today or from past videos just to go back to that. And as I said, I kind of learn something every time I look at that, given the fact that there's a lot going on in there. Okay, so I think the poll is complete. I will close that poll, share it with everybody. And spell check is correct as the main one that is not in there yet. And I find the way ACL kind of covers for that is when you're running something, it will bomb out, and that's kind of like your spell check. So let me kind of hide that and get back to our presentation here. Hopefully you're seeing that. So, just from a timing point of view, the group and else function of ACL I do have in the videos, but and something that is part of the 6 hours of videos that you'll get is something you can watch, and we go through a more fuller example. But I think that the main thing that I want to kind of tell you is that the group section, or using a group, will allow you to reduce processing time. So anything that you put within a group, and normally the nomenclature of setting up a group is to have the word group at the top, a bunch of commands, and then underneath that end. And what that tells ACL is to kind of put all of those together. Now, by grouping things, what it does is it allows you to kind of reduce the processing time as you go through ACL once. It's going to do multiple things, and it really works well for the extract statement, so that you could extract sort of one, let's say multiple files from one. If you wanted to create 4 quarterly files of an annual file, I would be using the group function, to kind of make that happen. Then there are kind of other, features within group that allows you to get to things like group else and group if things are true. But again, I think, for interest of our session today, I more or less wanted to note the group and show you something that you may want to consider utilizing, because it does speed up some of the commands that you run. But at the same time, I don't think it's something that you really should be focusing on from a beginner's point of view. So giving away a lot of kind of good examples and good things to work with. One of the things that I really like is, bear with me here, is this keyword searching. And what I find is that a lot of companies these days are using keywords and kind of doing a search of their data, and then and I'm kind of showing this. This is a very, very interesting, complex kind of statement. And this is something that, again, we pulled from our advanced course, again, just to show and give you the script, because you can use the script in many ways without having to know exactly how it works. But what it's going to do is to allow you to kind of search through an entire, basically take the last name of an employee and search through an entire kind of vendor name, using that. So it's a really useful test. What you could then obviously do is use that as part of like a keyword search as well. So with that said, we'll continue on and kind of show you this keyword search section now.
Okay, so what we were going to talk about now is the keywords search and a vendor to employee name searching, and talking about a main and subroutine, but also a more, let's say, a more extensive type of, join within ACL. So we're basically going to be joining across two different files, so that's how we'll work on that. And the key statement, although it's a little hard to read, it's a little easier now on ACL to read this. You basically are going to kind of create two blank fields, and on those blank fields join the files. And in this case, the key here is that we're actually selecting a file, input search through ext dot search through field converted. What that's going to do is it's actually going to kind of like join the file, but do an if statement where it's looking into the file, the secondary file that it's joining with. So in this case, the secondary file is called input search through ext, and it's going to kind of search through that file, that secondary file with this main file. So a little bit more complex of a script routine, and something that I wanted to show you in ACL, just so that you could see a little bit more of an advanced type of technique being used in a scripting type fashion. There's a couple of different ways that this can be done. There's a text matching script, and we'll talk about how this works. And actually, let me run it first, because I think this is kind of a cool one to run for you. So we're going to run this one, and we're going to select, what are we going to search through? We're going to search through the vendor master file in this case, and using the vendor master file, we're going to then search through it. Notice here the vendor master file shows up top here. We'll talk about that in a second. We're going to search through that. Basically we're going to select the vendor name field. Okay, so that's the field that we're going to search through. Then what are we going to search on? We're going to search on the employee file. So we're going to use that, I guess on through the other one, and we're going to use the last name. So does the employee last name show up in a vendor master file listing anywhere? Let's hit that OK button. And sure enough, let me just kind of make this a little bit bigger. So now Friedman is now Friedman Consulting, Jacobs, Eric Jacobs, Cox, Cox Executive Supplies. So these are how we've taken this field here and searched through this other field here. And notice we have the search on field converted and the search through field converted here. The search on was in the secondary table, and the search through was obviously in the primary table. So again, when you look at this, this particular statement here, so, well, it's probably better to look in ACL. You can kind of see how this is utilizing both fields in this type of join statement. Okay, so let's go to that, and then let's go to this text matching script. So the first dialog box asks you, what field do you want to search through? And this is a good thing to show you for our later discussion on dialog boxes. Notice we have input search through. That's the variable being created. and it's being selected from tables. So input search through, it's the variable being created. When I go down to this dialog here and open it up and click on this, notice what is in that edit box but input search through. So this edit box here, what we've kind of automatically done is put as a variable the input search through in there. So it's going to automatically show up there. Now I guess you could change it there, but you know, in the most part it's just going to come up as a box that you can change. And that was this edit box here. It's then going to search through field, and that's the search through field here. And it continues onward where this was the search through, this is the search on type work. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to create a blank field in both tables. So it's going to create this blank field through, it's going to create a record number, and then it's going to convert the search through field, which is the vendor name field, by all trimming it and setting it to more of an upper type of a situation. And then it's going to extract the blank field, the record number through, the search through, converted to a new file called input search through. And the reason I do this extract statement of just a few key fields is a couple of reasons. One, the record number noted, like all of these fields are more in a calculated format, which I don't really like. You know, I always like to kind of fix them in ACL. So now it's a fixed field, one blank space, a fixed field, the record number. You know, it's something where it's now, just to kind of show you in the data what I mean by fixed field, that it's in there. It's in that data now. It's not some calculation that we've created here, like some calculated field. It's actually in the data. Also, the data file is a lot smaller. So just as a script best practice, if you're about to do a very large join between two files, that it's a really good idea to kind of do so with this concept of keeping the files as small as possible. Because the smaller you can keep the file, the easier the join will work, and etc. So with that said, what we can then do is it will then open up the input on, which was the employee file, and do the same thing. And then what it's going to do is it doesn't really matter so much at this point, but I think we do this on some purpose. This is kind of the key statement. It goes back to, why is this the most key statement here? The first thing is that the key points are that it's a many-to-many search or join. It's a many-to-many join on a blank field. So it's a blank field, many-to-many search. When you have a many-to-many search on a blank field, what that's going to do is it's going to create a file of every record matched up to every record. So again, imagine this massive file now of every record matched up to every record called search file 1. Now, the good news is it's only going to do this if, and that's where we get to this part, if when searching through, basically taking that search on field, in this case, let's just take the search on field from the employee file. Let me just kind of open up one of these. So it's going to take the word COX, and it's going to take COX, and if it says if it finds COX throughout that file and in the secondary file, again, this is the kind of noting now we're looking into the secondary file and searching through that vendor name field. So it's only, even though I'm going to be doing this many-to-many join of every field to every field, I'm only doing it when there's a match of COX in that vendor name field. So in this case here, where COX matches somewhere in here, it doesn't have to start out with it. It's just it's somewhere within that particular field, and that's why we use the find function here. So again, a little more complex because we're doing many-to-many joins. I'm doing it on a blank field, which is kind of weird because it's going to create this massive file. But once I've done that, I then figure out, what are all of the matches in this case. And then I can take those matches and join it back to the original file, to figure out which are all the records that we kind of match up here. And then we can do the same thing with the employee file and kind of get all of the ones that are matching up here. But in this case, what we're then doing is we're taking the all of the fields from the vendor file and matching it up with all of the fields in the employee file, and that's this is kind of figuring out what were those matching record numbers in the through, and let's kind of match those up, and then which are all the record numbers in the on, and then match that up as well based on this search file 1 and 2. So that's going to end up getting you this final table here that has all of the employee fields matched up to all of the vendor fields. Last but not least, we then delete all of my temporary files, and probably we talked about this in previous discussions, but I always like to clean up after my batch. After my scripting, I like to figure out what are all the new fields that I created, what are all, and delete those from the original tables. What are all of the tables that I should be deleting and all of the formats that I should be deleting? And ultimately, you can open up the final file if you'd like, and then setting, say, safety to on or safety off, depending on what you want to do from this point forward. So again, this is kind of showing a lot of different techniques and something to refer back to. What I now want to do is kind of take this one little step forward, if you could believe that, and we're going to go into the keyword searching. So now, that we're in this keyword searching, what I'm going to do here is actually create a table of keywords, which I've done, and I have that in my test input files. You'll get this table as well. I don't know how good this is, but it's my best attempt at coming up with words that look really weird to be in general ledger or accounts payable files: casino, cash, consultant, drug, eBay, etc., flowers, etc., etc. Some other funny ones in here as well. So you can take a look at that. And what we end up doing here is, in this keywords script, is we use a very similar technique than we just used before, but in this particular case we're going to look through 3 fields, and we're going to use the same technique that we talked about, where we're going to kind of search through and on, and then we're going to do these 2 final joins at the end to ultimately kind of get all of the answers. So let's kind of quickly walk through this and try to show you my best attempt at coming up with some decent variable structures. So here I have the invoice input file. I probably should have put a V underscore T for table, but then we have the paid invoice file. There we have V underscore IH for invoice header, and then the vendor name equals vendor name, invoice number, and vendor address. And all of this relates to the paid invoice file. So if you take a look at this paid invoice file, you'll notice the field names as you cut across here are things like vendor name and invoice number and etc. So that's all listed out there. And vendor name, invoice number, vendor address. Then what we're doing is we're opening up the keywords table that we just opened up a second ago and setting the keyword field equal to keyword. And again, if I open up that table, just bear with me, you'll notice here the field name is called keyword. Okay. Now that I have that, pretty much follow the same logic. The only thing that I do, though, is I create a computed field that adds together, bear with me, the vendor address, the invoice number, and the vendor name that were all in that paid invoice file. So I just kind of like put it all together because I'm looking, you could add together 10 fields, right? I mean, have a description field, other, purchase order description field, all of these different fields to be put in here. But what ACL is then going to do is, based on this join that it's going to complete, is it's going to search through every one of those fields as one big field. And I did that on purpose just to make it one field. It's a lot simpler for my script to have one field that I'm searching through. Again, same technique, create the blank fields, join on the blank field in a many fashion. Again, it's a many-to-many, so every record is joined up to every record, and that's going to create that key field search 1 table, which in this case, I believe all I really need to do is join that up with the invoice input table based on that record number field. And with that said, once I have that key search field, what I'll do is I'll break my program right here. So we're just going to put the word break there, and then you can kind of see what's ultimately going to come out of this one. So let's go to this keyword script. I'm going to run it through. It gets to the word break, which is appropriate, and it created a file called keyword search 01. And what that is a table structure that has the record number within the invoice or the paid invoice file for every time it found something weird, like the word freight or equipment or charity or what else do we have in here? I think that's about it, that it found, and it has those record numbers. Then it takes that list of record numbers and joins it back to the original table. Bear with me. To that original table, and in this case being able to then identify all of the potential items that have been found. Let me just find that join there, and again just starting with the original table and then joining on the invoice input, and then from a fields point of view it's going to bring over from that keyword search table the keyword that it looked through, the actual the actual field that was calculated, the record number, and then it'll also then join with that paid invoice file and get all of that as well. And that's from this point forward is in the script. So let me just copy this part here to a new script. Keep it simple here, and I'm just going to copy that to here, and then I'm just going to run that new script. And that completed kind of the last portion of my work here that I needed to complete, and then that basically gave me the outputs for this analysis. So let me just so here is the keyword AP01 keyword search. Again, table AP01 being kind of the first work paper that we produced. We have then the keyword, did it search through to find that, the record number, and then every field from the paid invoice file then lined up next to that over on the right.
Okay, so into our next polling question number 4, which is essentially what word is used in the stratify command to break at a key field? And the answers are break, parse, key, or primary key are the 4 answers. Okay, so I will also look at the questions. Again, this keyword statement and many of the things that I'm showing you today, I continue to go back to all the time. I don't study this stuff, but more or less remember it and have video and audio and data files to go back to in order to kind of refer back. And you will be getting these data files and videos and all that such to go back to. And the actual data files and scripts, just looking at some of the questions, I'll try to answer a few here as we go. Let me get through this poll, and then we'll kind of open up ACL and show you, answer some of the questions. Let me share that with you. As you note, most people, on average, got the break command, and that is correct. Break was used in the stratify command in order to kind of break it at a key point. And then kind of getting back to my screen so that you can kind of see where we are in the process here. In essence, we're in ACL, And all of the scripts that we've been talking about, and actually other scripts, let me just kind of opening up this file as well, so you could kind of see the various scripts that relate to group else and standard deviation and all that stuff. All of that will be made available to you along with the videos. It'll take a few days in order to complete that. We normally will load all the video up, and it'll take probably about 5 days. I'm going to try to do it a lot quicker for this one, and we've made some we've made some processes, I guess, to make sure that it goes a little bit quicker this time. Another question we have is, can you show how to save deleted data into a separate file? If you put into a script that you wanted it to delete all records from an imported Excel file with a 0 amount in the invoice amount column, how do you save the deleted rows for future reference? Let's take a look at that particular question. It's very easy to answer this one pretty quickly. So let me just open this up, and just kind of opening up the original data, this June 7th class that we gave on Intro to ACL Scripting. If I open up one of the tables like the paid file, and let's just say, for argument's sake, that the check amount less than 50,000, we basically had an above average table that we had created, which was in here, that essentially was kind of greater than a particular amount. So let me just kind of say extract if the check amount is greater than 10,000, just to kind of create that, and then we'll put that to a file of over 10K. And that's 111 records. And what I'll do is I'll go back to my paid file then, and actually just maybe even using my log here, if that makes it easier for you too. If you click on Window Show Command Line, sometimes it's not there. You get your command line up top, and this can be very effective again for scripting. We were talking about how you could use this command log. What you could do is click on a log item, and it'll bring it up to the top there. And then you could do one of two things. I mean, you could do a not function and kind of surround whatever you had as an if statement with that not function, and put that to, well, I guess you could put not, but I guess it would be under 10K at that point. So that's like one kind of tricky approach, I guess, to it. But going back to the paid file, so I go open paid file, green arrow, and then extract record if, let's say check amount is less than or equal to $10,000 to the under 10K, and we get 618 records both times, so it works either way. But that is a way of saving kind of, data. Keep in mind the paid file that normally you import does have all of the original data in it, and if I was importing an Excel file, I would definitely import the entire thing, and then extract out what I wanted. And in the extract statement too, you might even want to not extract the record, the entire record, but you do have the option of extracting fields, so you can even kind of say, well, I want the enter date first, and the enter initial, and then the check number, and etc. After that. So, okay. With that said, let me kind of just quickly check here my questions and see how I'm doing, and pretty much getting to all of them. I know there's a lot here, and again, I kind of, what Jim and I believe agree with is just-in-time training of kind of pulling this video and script out just before you get started with an ACL project of your own on a similar topic is really the best way to learn, and something I'm doing all the time. Okay, so getting into script best practices, kind of the final section of today, and before we close out, and we'll definitely be getting out of here on time, but as to the various best practices, I like to kind of set safety on and off, which means, you set safety off at the beginning of the script and on at the end. I also like to set those variables up front, so input file, check amount, all those things we've been talking about as variables. I like to do that as far to the front as possible. Now, and I think you've seen that from all the dialogues we've been putting in the front of ACL to date. Another thing that's useful is to actually code into a text editor, but I do find, ACL's new, like if you're on version 9.3 forward, which hopefully you are, coding in their editor is quite good now. So, I mean, you don't even really need the text editor, but sometimes it can be useful. I like to comment throughout my code, and that's by putting the word comment, like we were doing, and then having some, text after it. It gives you a really good kind of place marker in each one of your scripts as to where to go and where to go back to. We talked about pause statements at the end of a script, let's say. The only problem with pause statements is if you're trying to run like 10 things, you don't want it pausing halfway through. So, I mean, pause statements are meant for the end, usually, of it, unless you wanted it to show you something, and something like you can even do a complex pause statement. I'll just note this for now. Instead of it just having like some description or text in the pause statement, what you can actually have is a calculation. So you could say, the average amount is greater than this. Is that okay? And do you want to continue or something? And it gives you a bit of a pause, obviously, at that point. And then you could hit your escape key in ACL, and the escape key will kind of get you out of a script at any time. Deleting all OK is something I've been putting at the end of scripts, and what that does is essentially get rid of all the variables that were set up in the script. It kind of sets it up so that the next time around it's a lot easier to kind of run it. You don't have these old variables that are set within there, so that's something else that I find is quite useful. We talked about deleting files at the end, and this is just something, I know we showed it a few times, and I'm just kind of putting it here in a PowerPoint so you could see it. And that is, we wanted to first delete the actual file on the hard drive. So that's like delete sorted.fil OK. Now, it's funny, like, why do you have to put OK at the end of delete all and delete sorted.fil if you see that there? And it's like there are certain things that set safety off. We talked about set safety off just a few times, but back here, set safety off will not work on certain things, and certain things being like deleting variables and deleting actual files. So that's something where you want to basically have the OK after delete sorted.fil, or delete all OK, which gets rid of variables. Then after we've done that, we want to delete the input file definition in ACL. So that's that little table icon that we're used to seeing in ACL. You want to delete that format, so you go delete format sorted OK. We also talked later in the broadcast or midway about setting up a script that does other scripts, like a master script that you go, what do you want to do today? And you select items. Probably the radio, I hope I got that right, no, the checkbox, probably the checkbox is the best way to set up a dialogue at that point, as I think we discussed. Because you could pick a lot of different things, like I want to run this one and that one and the other one, and and then ACL will go off and kind of run all of those scripts for you. So having a master script as well can be a useful thing. Again, we're kind of getting towards the end of the broadcast, and just kind of taking a look here. Okay, keeping joint statements concise. How did I do that again was one of the questions. Let me go into ACL and show you that before we get to our last polling question. Bear with me one second. Okay, so in the actual join statement in the script code of it, there are some things you can do, and bear with me 1 minute here. Just trying to get to the actual join statement. Okay, so one of the things that you can do to kind of keep a join statement pretty clean, for one thing, you definitely want to put close secondary at the end of any join statement, because I find ACL will otherwise kind of keep that secondary file open, and then when you go to the next one and try to open up another secondary file, it says, hey, we already have one open. So closing secondary is something that sort of unfortunately, I think, but you have to kind of throw that in there. That keeps it clean, if that helps. Hopefully that answers it. But also, in the actual fields, a couple of things you could do. I mean, right here I'm being very definitive, like join on this field, and the fields that I want to get from this first table, input search on, is just this one field here, the secondary key being that. But you can be very definitive and say, I just want these fields, these two, or you could actually just put the words all. And by putting the word all, that'll get everything, from that table, which maybe you don't want to have, but at the same time, it is something, it is a way to also kind of keep things clean, in that you don't have to worry about the fields that are in there. You can actually just have the all statement, kind of take care of it and run through. So hopefully I've answered that question. Let's just kind of throw up that last poll, and then we'll just kind of have closing remarks and such. What function allows you to search through a field in ACL? Is it the find, the look, the write, or the mid? And I'll keep my eye out on questions. I've tried to answer them as we've gone here. Okay, we're almost done here. 100% voted. Let me close that poll and share it with everyone. And the majority of people, you are correct. It is the find function within ACL that we utilize to kind of look through things. And let me just quickly, I'll just kind of hide that screen and just bear with me 1 second. Before I do that, so I just wanted to open up a website. Hopefully that'll open while we're kind of closing out this poll. Bear with me. Hide. Okay. So hopefully you're seeing my screen here. One of the things I did want to mention, as we are at the end here, within about 5 days, we'll give you a link to a video that you can watch, and that video will be of this course today, the 2 hours. But there is a course index, and even if you go to Training Topics, ACL, Scripting in ACL, so if you kind of see that, it's a little bit drilled down there. This is even, I think, an easier way to go. You can look at all of the videos that we have on scripting, which are quite a few. I mean, it's actually more than, the normal share. But then if you go to the actual view over 70 hours of video courses, there are going to be 3 courses that we're giving you data files on today, and they're all with the word scripting in it. So it's like, basic script writing, intermediate script writing, advanced script writing. And you can either watch the videos, but also you'll be getting the data files, so you can work with that as well. So, we have a slide in here about that, and that you'll be getting that info within about 5 days. Just give us some time, but I'll try to get it to you quicker than not. And then these are the files, 7th, 19th, and October 9th that we did courses. These are the names of them. And you'll get all those files and scripts, so you can run this stuff yourself. And that, I think is the beauty, some of the beauty of what we're trying to do today. A couple last but not least, I'll look for questions. If you have any more, just throw them up there. We'll try our best here. I'm just trying to open those up as we talk here.
Yeah, Rich, there is another question there.
Great.
Can the files you're providing be used in version 9 of ACL?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have trouble, like if it says this was created in a later version of ACL, let me know, and I can try to reconvert it back to something smaller. But version 9, it should work, and that's because they were created in version 9. So yeah, no, you should be fine. And then performance of ODBC connection.
Right.
That's a tough one. It really depends on your network connection. It depends on security. It depends on virus protection on that process that's being run. So there's a lot there. I have found it to be very good, though. I don't ODBC, when you finally get it from IT, which is a hard thing to get, it tends to run pretty efficiently, for sure. So. And do you usually use the default size of dialog boxes? No, I don't. So that's something else. I usually will kind of drag the dialog box and make it bigger, which is what I was trying to do today. Hopefully you saw that. And again, the video would show you how to do that. What is the better configuration of a virtual machine to use ACL? Wow, I have to admit I don't know. That is something for tech support, and I'm really not even sure of what a virtual machine is. So I have to be honest and say that's really for something for ACL.
Yeah, that brings up a good point, Rich.
Yeah.
In terms of if you're having issues with anything regarding ACL, and you're a premium supported user, use the help desk. Contact ACL, and they can usually walk you through some of the issues. Even, I'm sure, scripting issues, they can probably provide you some assistance on that.
Yeah, and they put that stuff in their knowledge base, too, so like as they're answering your question, it kind of gets out there for everyone else. So, it's good feedback. Trust me, they need the, every software company needs the feedback. So, yeah, no, totally agreed.
Right, and I know that everybody, regardless of what your level of knowledge of ACL is. I mean, I'm a beginning ACL user, and Rich did move pretty fast through today. And the benefit of the videos that Rich has is that you can go back and you can watch not only today's session, but also you'll be able to watch the intro to ACL scripting and the other videos that Rich put up there, and those previously were available only through a subscription, on a subscription basis, but Rich is making a lot of those available now just for registering on auditsoftwarevideos.com.
Yeah,
so,
and agreed. And yeah, just to quickly show you while we're here, if you're looking, we kind of have a sign up here, right there. But even on the home page, you also get a sign up here, subscribe here, and really, it's all free. We just need to know who you are. You know what I mean? So you just click on subscribe, and away you go. So yeah, no, we're trying to put it out there for free, and because you really need it in a just-in-time fashion. Like, you're going to want that join statement and watch the video the minute before you do a vendor-to-employee search, not
exactly.
Kind of thing. So just in the queue here, I probably should note we have a. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just noting a couple more that we have coming up, and if you haven't seen it, a couple of courses on Excel, because I use Excel a lot in relation to ACL, and also trying to talk about how to build some more simple yet really effective continuous monitoring in ACL, and just something to get started with. And I find a lot of companies just need something to get started with continuous monitoring. So that's kind of what that course will be. Yeah, no, Jim, sorry,
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing. One of our attendees today pointed out the fact that, down at the bottom of the screen there you see auditsoftware.net. And if you go to auditsoftware.net, you will notice that there's a lot of links to old information, and really that's Rich and my fault for not updating the slides. The slides really need to be reflecting audit software videos.
Agreed.
So,
yeah.
We will go ahead and we will do that for the future webinars. But I really want to thank Rich for putting on a great presentation today. And this is an important area that a lot of you know, a lot of the trainers do not provide this sort of detailed knowledge, and also the videos, you know, that are made available free to all registered users. So please take advantage of that, and thank you, Rich, for doing this today, and thank you all for your great questions, and you know, for joining us today. You know, we look forward to having Rich come back, and he's doing some webinars on pivot tables. He's also doing the continuous monitoring, and he's got one for sampling, as well as one for financial statements. Some of those are Excel-based, and you know, these are what you're looking at now are basically Excel or ACL. So please come back and join us, and I think we're at the closing time. So
great, thank you.
Thank you all, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.